The
know.
end of childhood immediately.
Yes, it ended in childhood, right? Yeah, right.
Did that area look the same then as it does now? That area across from me. I lived a few blocks from there for years, and that it's such a sprawling, wild spot. One of the busiest areas in the city.
Well, right there where I worked, 34th
Yeah.
and 7th. Oh, yes. It was hustle bustle all the time, you know. You come out on the streets and, you know, you'd have to, well, it was though the World Series was letting out,
Yeah.
you know, and finding a restaurant to get a space at a counter, you know. Yes,
It used to take me 10 minutes to get out the door to get to the street because you couldn't get a space of people walking 8, 10 deep to get through. You
Sure.
couldn't cross through.
Right, right, yes.
Yeah.
In fact, sometimes when you look at pictures of New York City and the crowded sidewalks, sometimes it doesn't look as crowded then as it was, you know, when I was working there.
Yeah.
It was really, really jam-packed, you know. Well, you know, in that area, it's complicated by the fact that, at least in those days, they had all of these people who were moving the textiles in carts through the streets.
They still do.
Something like,
Still,
you know,
yeah.
they still move those bolts of material and so forth, and that would complicate the whole, and then all the deliveries that were made in the narrow streets.
And then you get all the fur coats going
Yeah.
through on the racks. You know, you have expensive fur coats, and there might be 30 of them on
That's
a rack,
right.
and a guy's cutting
Right.
you off.
Yeah, yeah.
It's crazy.
That's
So
right.
you worked there for 1 year, and then the calling came. What was that like?
Well, I think the start of it, where I faced up to it, rather than keeping it just inside myself, was one day my boss, O'Donnell, came to me in the office, and he said, I'm going to have a luncheon meeting over at the Hotel Pennsylvania, right across from Penn Station. Okay, Hotel Pennsylvania. And I'm going to be with your father. And we're going to talk business, and I want you to come. Okay, fine. I said, what has my old man got to do with it? Me in the business anyway, you know? Although my father and O'Donnell were business friends.
Oh, they were?
Yeah. So we had drinks and started the meal and so forth, and then the business started. The basis of the business was O'Donnell wanted to expand the business, which was a buyer and a seller of the goods. He was like the middleman between the people who got the raw bolts of cloth and the people who would then make it into a suit or dress or whatever it might be. And he worked the deal and financed it, okay? So he started to talk about this expansion of the business with my father. And the idea was that if everything looked all right, my father would be involved on the finance side. His company would provide the money for O'Donnell to start all of this, or credit finance, or whatever proper names you give to this. So then he said, and I think that if I do this, I'm going to open up this branch office in California. And it may be Los Angeles, it may be San Francisco, I don't know yet. But I brought your son along because if I do it, I'd like him to go out and be the manager of that extension out on the West Coast, you know. So my father lit up and said, well, isn't that nice, you know? So
You were going to be locked in.
yeah. So he said, what do you think of that? And I don't know. I just said, I can't do it.
Right on the spot, you said it?
I did. I said, I can't do it. He said, what do you mean you can't do it? I said, I think I have a religious vocation. Well, no, O'Donnell's Catholic. Okay.
Was he there?
He was there, yeah. It was just the three of us at the
Okay.
meeting, you know. What the hell are you talking about? Because here, I mean, here I am, 25 years of age at this point, you know. So that was the breaking of it. I had not shared any feelings with anybody at all, really, at all. Because yes, later on I saw people, but
So it was out
not
of the
at that
blue for
point.
your
It was
father.
just out of the blue, and he just said, "Let's have another round."
And not to celebrate.
Right. So that was it, you know. So he said, well, let's keep the meeting going. I'll speak to you at home tonight."
Were you living at home?
Yeah, I was living at home at the time. Yeah.
Wow. It's funny
Yeah,
how
26. I was 26.
somebody could stay on top of something like the nun. What was her name? Sister
St.
St.
James.
Sister St.
Yeah.
James. That it's an accumulating thing. That somebody could keep on top of something, and then then it goes. It's not yours. It's not yours. It's not yours, and then it's yours.
Yeah.
That look. You said you had to look back in retrospect because you couldn't even understand how it accumulated, but it did, and it just shows so much for human nature of perseverance. That somebody persevered in your behalf for you for a monumental thing and opportunity, the opposite opportunity brought it on. That's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I wasn't thinking those thoughts. You know,
No,
at the
you said
time.
you had to-
It
said you
just
had to look back
happened,
on it,
you
yeah.
know. And so after that,
When you went home, was your father horrified or was he cool with it?
no, he just said, "Hey, explain this to me. What's this all about?" You know. So I tried to explain it as best I could, and I said, "Now look I am not clear on this yet, but I said, you were talking long range. I mean, relatively long range there, and it was obviously my life. I could not please you or even O'Donnell by saying, 'Hey, Roy, that's great.' I had to tell you how that struck me at that moment. And I said, I still have a bit of searching to do. Because I didn't know exactly
What that even
what
meant.
it meant. I didn't. And just to show you the confusion that I had to clear up, my first thought was to go and visit priests.
Right.
So I visited with one of those scholastics who taught me, who was by that time had been ordained, Father Joseph Ryan. And he knew me well. He was my teacher and all of this sort of stuff, you know. And he discouraged me. And he discouraged me because of the length of time relative to train to become a Jesuit. And he said, you can do fine work, etc., but it would be you'd have a long period of training. At that time, I think they were something like a dozen years
Or
for
at
the
least
Jesuits, you know,
12 to
right,
15
12 to
years.
15 years long. You know, I would have been 40 years of age before you even started. And at that time, 40 seemed to be almost the end of the line, you know. So he said, look around a little bit before, you know, you proceed much further.
So the Jesuits always usually go in right out of high school? To become a Jesuit? When that young?
Oh, some of them did. At that time, yeah,
Yeah.
they did. Oh, yeah. Because again, you know, then they knew that they weren't going to be ordained until maybe they were 35 or something like that, you know. And so then I started to say, okay, now I got, who else do I know? Well, it isn't so much who I know as where would I like. So the next place that I went to was the Franciscans on 31st Street. And I saw them, and the priest that I spoke to, I don't remember his name, he said, you know, he said, I think that Father Ryan probably gave you pretty good advice. There's a long, long period of time, even with, it wouldn't be as long with the Franciscans, but he said, so I said, well, you know, Father, I said, I think what maybe I want is not to be a priest.